My name is Emily, and at 34, I never thought I'd find myself standing in my parents' doorway, clutching a warm apple pie and gifts, hoping for a Christmas where my family might finally see me. I always believed that this year could be different, that my carefully chosen presents and grandmother Clara's pie recipe could bridge decades of family tension, until my brother Ethan, with his signature smirk, asked why they'd waste a seat on me at the dinner table. In that moment, I felt my heart shatter, humiliation burning my face as the room fell silent. No one meeting my eyes. Before I share what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, smash that like button. For weeks, I'd poured myself into preparing for this day. Each gift was chosen with care: a handcrafted scarf in my mother's favorite shade of blue, a first edition mystery novel for my father, a custom photo album capturing Sophie's wedding preparations. For Ethan, though, I'd crafted something different: a bound collection of evidence, emails where he undermined me to relatives, screenshots of texts where he gloated about his lies, a recording from last Christmas where he laughed about turning our parents against me, and a note declaring this my last attempt to reveal his true nature. I'd agonized over bringing it. Dr. Carter, my therapist, had warned that confronting deep-seated family dynamics rarely shifts them, but a stubborn part of me clung to the idea that truth could break through. Maybe this time, I whispered to myself, they'll see me for who I am, not who Ethan says I am. I'd driven to my parents' suburban home with butterflies in my stomach, rehearsing responses to Ethan's inevitable jabs. The car smelled of apples and pastry, grandmother Clara's recipe, a small anchor to a happier memory of baking with her. I hadn't anticipated the sting of being told I didn't deserve a place at their table. At 3:00 p.m. sharp, I pulled into their driveway. The house gleamed, a holiday magazine's dream, but my chest tightened with familiar dread. I checked my reflection in the car mirror: forest green dress hugging my frame, auburn hair in loose waves, makeup subtle yet polished. I looked like the confident architect I'd become, the woman I wanted my family to finally respect. The door swung open, and my mother stood there in a red cashmere sweater, pearl earrings catching the light. "Emily," she said, her smile thin, more obligation than warmth. "Right on time." Her tone carried a faint edge, as if punctuality were a fault. I stepped inside, arms full of gifts and the pie, but she took only the dessert with a quick, "Thank you," before vanishing into the kitchen, leaving me to juggle the rest. In the living room, the family buzzed. My father was laughing with Sophie and her husband, Daniel, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's my son-in-law," he boomed. Across the room, Ethan held court with aunts and uncles, his wife Jessica at his side, her diamond bracelet glinting. I set my gifts under the tree, but before I could join a conversation, Ethan's voice cut through. "Emily, that dress is bold," he said, loud enough for others to glance over, his smirk already sharpening. "Green's a tough color to pull off." I forced a smile, my rehearsed response ready. "Thanks, Ethan. I hear real estate's been tough lately. How's that going?" His eyes narrowed, but he recovered quickly. "Better than ever. Not everyone can handle the market like I can." The slight hung in the air, a small but familiar wound. I turned away, catching Sophie's eye. She offered a quick hug and a whispered, "Nice dress, but maybe don't mention work. Mom's stressed." Before I could reply, my cousin Olivia entered with her new boyfriend, Michael, and the room swarmed to greet them. Around Olivia's neck hung grandmother Clara's silver locket, the heirloom she'd taken, the one Ethan had convinced everyone I didn't deserve. Our eyes met, and she looked away, her fingers brushing the locket. In that moment, my hope flickered, but I straightened my shoulders, clinging to the possibility that this Christmas could rewrite our story. The door swung open to reveal my mother, elegant as always in a red cashmere sweater and pearl earrings. Emily? She said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You're right on time. The observation seemed more accusation than compliment. I stepped inside, arms laden with gifts and my pie. My mother accepted the dessert with a cursory thank you before disappearing into the kitchen without offering to help with the presents or take my coat. In the living room, a very different scene was unfolding. My father was enthusiastically embracing Sophie and her husband Daniel, laughing at something Daniel had said. "That's my son-in-law," he exclaimed, clapping Daniel on the back. Across the room, Ethan was holding court with our aunts and uncles, gesturing animatedly as they listened with rapt attention. His wife, Jessica, stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Diamond bracelet catching the light from the chandelier. "Emily's here," my mother announced flatly as she returned from the kitchen. A few heads turned my way, offering perfunctory smiles and distracted waves before returning to their conversations. Only Sophie broke away to give me a brief hug. "Nice dress," she said before lowering her voice. "Just so you know, Mom's been stressed about dinner all day, so maybe don't bring up work stuff. Last time you talked about your promotion, she had a migraine for 2 days." Before I could respond, Olivia entered the room with her new boyfriend. "Everyone, this is Michael," she announced. The family swarmed around them, asking questions and offering drinks. Around Olivia's neck, catching the light from the Christmas tree, hung grandmother Clara's silver locket. I placed my gifts under the tree and moved toward a group of relatives, attempting to join their conversation about recent travel. My Aunt Linda was describing her cruise to Alaska when I approached. "It sounds amazing," I said during a pause. "I've been researching sustainable tourism options for my next vacation." My aunt glanced at me, nodded vaguely, then turned slightly to exclude me from the circle. Anyway, as I was saying about the glaciers, this pattern repeated throughout the pre-dinner mingling. Conversations stopped when I approached. Family members excused themselves to refresh their drinks. Questions about my life were superficial and brief, immediately redirected to more interesting topics. When it was time for family photos, my mother organized everyone in front of the fireplace. "Ethan and Jessica in the center," she directed. "Sophie and Daniel on the left. Olivia and Michael on the right." She positioned aunts, uncles, and cousins around them, then stepped back to assess the arrangement. "Mom," I said quietly. "Where should I stand?" She blinked, as if just remembering I was there. "Oh, Emily, could you actually take the photo? You're so good with that sort of thing." I swallowed the lump in my throat and took the camera, capturing multiple shots of my smiling family, while I remained invisible behind the lens. Later, as I helped arrange appetizers on the dining room sideboard, Ethan approached. He looked me up and down with that familiar smirk. "Green is certainly a bold choice for your complexion," he said, just loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. "But I guess architecture firms don't exactly prioritize fashion sense, do they?" I forced a smile. "How's the real estate market, Ethan? I heard interest rates have made things challenging." His eyes narrowed slightly. "For amateurs, maybe. My portfolio's never been stronger." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Speaking of strong, how's your therapy going? Mom mentioned you've been getting help for your issues." Heat rushed to my face. My therapy sessions were private. I had only told my mother in confidence during a rare moment when she had seemed genuinely concerned about me. "I'm doing very well, thank you," I replied stiffly, arranging stuffed mushrooms on a platter with more force than necessary. Ethan chuckled, satisfied at having provoked a reaction. "Good to hear. We're all very concerned about your stability." He patted my shoulder condescendingly before rejoining his wife. Across the room, I spotted Olivia touching the locket as she laughed at something Michael said. Our eyes met briefly, and I thought I detected a flicker of guilt before she deliberately turned away. As the afternoon wore on, I began noticing something odd about the dining room setup. My mother was a stickler for tradition, always using her best china, crystal glasses, and silver place settings for holiday meals. The table was already set beautifully with the Christmas china, matching napkins folded into perfect swans, and name cards at each place. I casually walked around the table, counting places and looking for my name. 10 settings, 10 chairs, 12 people, including me. My name card was nowhere to be found. "Mom?" I asked, finding her in the kitchen basting the turkey. "I don't see my place card at the table." She kept her eyes on the oven. "Don't worry about that now, Emily. Why don't you make yourself useful and refill the ice bucket?" An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach as I did as she asked. When I returned with the ice, I overheard my mother whispering to my aunt in the hallway. "I don't know why she's making such a fuss," my mother was saying. "It's not like she ever enjoys these gatherings anyway. Always sitting there with that look on her face." "But Margaret," my aunt replied, "surely there's room to squeeze in one more chair." My mother sighed dramatically. "James's back has been bothering him. He needs space at the table, and Ethan's specifically asked that we keep things intimate this year. You know how he feels about Emily's attitude." They fell silent as they noticed me standing there, ice bucket in hand. My aunt at least had the grace to look embarrassed, while my mother simply took the ice and walked away. I retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. Staring at my reflection, I wondered how I could have been so naive. I had come hoping for acceptance, for a place in my family, when they had already decided I didn't deserve one literally. Taking a deep breath, I splashed cold water on my face and reapplied my lipstick. I had two choices: leave now and preserve what little dignity I had left, or stay and see this through to whatever humiliating conclusion awaited me. I thought about Ethan's gift, sitting innocently under the tree. I thought about years of exclusion and gaslighting. I thought about Dr. Carter's words about chosen family. Then I straightened my shoulders, unlocked the bathroom door, and headed back to the living room. I would see this through. One way or another, this Christmas would be different. "Dinner is served." My mother's voice rang out from the dining room at precisely 5:00 p.m. Family members began migrating toward the delicious aromas, drinks in hand. Conversations continuing without pause. The dining room was a vision of holiday perfection. The mahogany table gleamed under the soft light of the chandelier, which had been adorned with sprigs of holly. A red and green runner stretched down the center, decorated with pine cones, cinnamon sticks, and miniature gold ornaments. Tall red candles in silver holders provided a warm, flickering glow that reflected off the crystal glasses at each place setting. The Christmas china, which my mother only used once a year, featured hand-painted holly borders around cream-colored plates. Each napkin was folded into the shape of a Christmas tree, with small silver star napkin rings at the top. Place cards, written in my mother's elegant calligraphy, marked each person's assigned seat. The centerpiece was a lush arrangement of red roses, white lilies, and pine branches, professionally designed and delivered that morning. According to my aunt's earlier comments, everything was meticulously arranged, each detail considered and perfect. Everyone began finding their seats, exclaiming over the beauty of the table. My father took his place at the head, with my mother at the foot. Ethan and Jessica were seated at my father's right hand, the position of honor. Sophie and Daniel sat at my mother's right. Olivia and Michael were placed across from Ethan and Jessica, while my aunt and uncle completed the arrangement. I stood awkwardly at the threshold of the dining room, waiting for someone to notice the obvious problem. No one did, or rather, no one chose to acknowledge it. Finally, as everyone settled into their chairs, my Aunt Linda glanced up at me, still standing in the doorway. A look of discomfort crossed her face before she quickly looked away, suddenly very interested in straightening her napkin. "Mom," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm despite the hammering of my heart. "Where should I sit?" A hush fell over the table. My mother paused in the act of serving the mashed potatoes, her expression momentarily frozen before shifting into a practiced smile. "Oh, Emily," she said lightly, as if addressing a minor inconvenience rather than a profound exclusion. "The table's quite full with everyone here. I thought you could eat in the car. It's just for today." The words hung in the air like ice crystals, sharp and cold. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Around the table, gazes dropped to plates. Wine glasses suddenly became fascinating objects of study. Then Ethan, emboldened by the silence, looked directly at me with that familiar smirk of superiority. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes gleaming with malice. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, looking around at each face, searching for someone, anyone, who would speak up for me. My father stared intently at his plate, methodically cutting a piece of turkey without looking up. Sophie bit her lip, her eyes darting between me and Ethan, but she remained silent. Jessica, Ethan's wife, had the decency to look uncomfortable, but she placed her hand over his on the table in a gesture of solidarity. Olivia touched Grandmother Clara's locket at her throat, then quickly dropped her hand when she noticed me watching. Michael, clearly confused by the tension, looked to Olivia for explanation, but she simply shook her head slightly. My aunt and uncle exchanged glances but said nothing. My mother continued serving food as if nothing unusual had happened, as if suggesting her daughter eat Christmas dinner alone in a cold car was perfectly normal. I looked around the table once more, taking in every detail. Everyone had a place, everyone except me. Even Olivia, who had stolen something precious from me and never faced consequences, sat comfortably among family, accepted and included. My face burned with humiliation. My stomach felt hollow. I could feel tears threatening, but I refused to give Ethan the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I took a slow, deep breath, feeling something shift inside me. For years, I had sought approval from these people. I had made excuses for their behavior, blamed myself for not being lovable enough, tried harder and harder to earn a place in their hearts. And here was the literal manifestation of my position in the family all along. There was no room for me at their table. There never had been. I glanced toward the Christmas tree in the living room, where my carefully wrapped packages sat. Among them was Ethan's gift, the one I had debated for weeks about giving, the one that contained evidence of years of manipulation and cruelty. In that moment, standing excluded in the doorway of my childhood home, while my family prepared to enjoy Christmas dinner without me, something crystallized in my mind. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an oversight. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being treated as less than, as unwanted, as the family member they tolerated rather than loved. And for the first time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of rejection. Instead, I felt something else entirely: clarity. I remembered placing Ethan's gift at a spot before dinner, slipping the small envelope under his plate while helping set the table. No one had noticed. No one ever noticed what I did, unless it was to criticize. I looked back at the table, at my brother's smug expression, at my mother's deliberate avoidance, at my father's cowardice, at Olivia wearing my grandmother's locket, at the empty space where I should have been sitting. And I made a decision that would change everything. Standing in that doorway, excluded from my own family's Christmas dinner, I felt a strange calm descend over me. It was as if I was watching the scene from outside my body, seeing with perfect clarity what had been true all along. This wasn't new behavior. This was simply the most honest version of what had been happening my entire life. Memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession. Age 7, waiting alone after ballot practice because my parents forgot to pick me up. Too busy attending Ethan's baseball game. Age 12, eating lunch alone in the school bathroom after Ethan told everyone I had lice, age 16. Not being allowed to go to homecoming because Ethan said he'd seen me smoking behind the gym, a complete fabrication. My college graduation, where my parents left early because Ethan claimed to have food poisoning, job promotions met with indifference, holidays where my gifts were opened last and with minimal enthusiasm. The pattern was undeniable. I had spent decades making excuses for their behavior, telling myself that if I just achieved more, spoke more eloquently, dressed more appropriately, somehow I would finally earn their love and respect. But standing there, watching them begin to eat, as if my exclusion was the most natural thing in the world, I finally understood. Nothing I could ever do would be enough, because the problem had never been me. A curious warmth spread through my chest, replacing the cold ache of rejection. It wasn't happiness, exactly, it was something more powerful: liberation. The freedom that comes with finally acknowledging a painful truth instead of running from it. Dr. Carter's words from our last session echoed in my mind. Emily, you keep trying to win a game that's rigged against you. The only winning move might be not to play. Under Ethan's plate sat the envelope I had carefully placed there earlier. Inside was evidence I had collected over years of his manipulation, screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about turning our parents against me, emails he had sent to family members planting seeds of doubt about my character and stability, a recording from last Thanksgiving where he admitted to deliberately sabotaging my relationships, a copy of grandmother Clara's will, specifically leaving her locket to me, which the family had never seen because Ethan had intercepted it. I had gathered these pieces meticulously, initially planning to confront the entire family to force them to see the truth about their golden boy. I had imagined tears, apologies, a dramatic reconciliation, the fantasy of finally being embraced as an equal member of the family. But now, looking at them all, comfortable in their exclusion of me, I realized that fantasy had always been just that. Even with irrefutable evidence, they would find a way to excuse Ethan, to blame me, to maintain the family mythology they had invested in for decades. I considered my options. I could create a scene, dumping the evidence on the table and demanding acknowledgement. I could break down in tears, appealing to whatever shreds of empathy they might possess. I could grab Ethan's plate and throw it against the wall, decades of repressed anger finally finding release. But each of those scenarios gave them power over me. Each made me the unstable one, the problem to be managed. Each would reinforce the narrative Ethan had so carefully constructed. Or I could choose a different path. I could recognize that I deserved better than fighting for scraps of affection from people who had demonstrated time and again that they were incapable of giving it freely. I could acknowledge that family isn't just about blood relations, but about mutual respect and care. I could choose myself. In that moment, I made my decision. I would not beg for a seat at a table where I wasn't wanted. I would not expose Ethan's manipulations to people who had actively participated in my exclusion. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I would leave them with something that would speak louder than any emotional outburst. I would leave them with the truth and the knowledge that I was done playing by their rules. The family continued eating, conversation gradually resuming as they collectively decided to ignore the uncomfortable scene. Ethan was telling some story about a difficult client, gesturing with his fork, reveling in being the center of attention as always. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, no longer waiting in the doorway, but entering the room with purpose. My movement caught their attention, conversations faltering as all eyes turned toward me. I walked directly to the Christmas tree and picked up my gift for Ethan. The room was utterly silent now, everyone watching with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. With measured steps, I approached the table, the wrapped package in my hands. I stood directly behind Ethan's chair, feeling a strange sense of power as he had to twist awkwardly to look up at me. For once, I was the one looking down at him. The dining room fell silent as I stood behind Ethan, gift in hand. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady when I finally spoke. "Ethan," I said, my tone calm and clear. "I brought something special for you this Christmas." His expression shifted from annoyance to wariness. He knew me well enough to sense something had changed, that this wasn't the same Emily who typically absorbed his cruelty with quiet hurt. "Can it wait until after dinner?" My mother interjected, her voice strained. "We've just started eating." "No," I replied simply. "It can't." I placed the elegantly wrapped box beside Ethan's plate. The paper was silver with subtle snowflakes, tied with a blue ribbon that matched his eyes that now regarded me with suspicion. "What is this?" he asked, not touching the package. "Open it," I suggested. "Or don't. But either way, check under your plate." Ethan's face paled slightly. His hand moved instinctively to the edge of his plate, but he hesitated. "What are you talking about?" my father demanded, finally finding his voice. "Emily, you're disrupting dinner." "I'm disrupting dinner," I repeated, a small laugh escaping me. "Not the fact that you've all decided I should eat in my car. Not Ethan suggesting you'd be wasting a seat on me." Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. Sophie looked down at her lap. Olivia fidgeted with her napkin. "You're being dramatic," Ethan said, attempting to regain control. "It's just seating arrangements. Not everything is about you." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not about me, it's about you, Ethan. It always has been." I gestured toward his plate. "Go ahead, look underneath." Something in my tone must have unsettled him, because Ethan actually pushed back his chair slightly. With obvious reluctance, he lifted his plate, revealing the cream-colored envelope beneath. The table watched in tense silence as he opened it and removed the contents. His face, always so controlled, so practiced at projecting confidence, visibly shifted as he scanned the first page. Color drained from his cheeks, then rushed back as anger replaced shock. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "The truth," I replied simply. "Something this family isn't particularly familiar with." His eyes darted back to the papers, then up to me, then around the table. For perhaps the first time in his life, Ethan Thompson was speechless. "What is it?" my mother asked, stretching to see across the table. "Nothing," Ethan said quickly, attempting to stuff the papers back into the envelope. "It's evidence," I said calmly. "Screenshots of texts where Ethan brags about turning you against me. Emails where he undermines me to family members. A recording from last Thanksgiving where he admits to lying about me for years." Jessica, Ethan's wife, frowned and reached for the envelope. "Let me see that." Ethan pulled it away from her. "It's nothing. Emily's making things up, as usual." "Am I?" I asked. "Then why are you hiding it? If I'm lying, show everyone." Ethan's jaw clenched. He knew he was caught. "There's also a copy of Grandmother Clara's will," I continued, looking directly at Olivia. "The one specifically leaving her locket to me." Olivia's hand flew to the locket around her neck. "I didn't. She gave it to me," she stammered. "No, she didn't," I said firmly. "Ethan told you I didn't want it. He intercepted the will and convinced you that Grandmother had changed her mind." Olivia turned to Ethan, confusion and betrayal dawning on her face. "Is that true?" Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to these accusations." "Then don't," I replied. "But everyone should know that I've made copies of everything in that envelope. I'm done protecting this family's illusions about their golden boy." My father finally found his voice. "Emily, that's enough. This is Christmas dinner." For Goss it is, I agreed. A dinner I wasn't welcome at. A family I've never truly been welcome in. I turned my attention back to Ethan, who was now gripping the envelope so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Check under your plate again, I instructed, with visible reluctance. He lifted his plate once more to reveal a small handwritten note I had placed beneath the envelope. Read it, I said. Ethan's eyes scanned the note, his expression hardening. When he didn't speak, I recited the words I had written hours earlier. This is the last time I will try to make you see me. The last time I will fight for a place in this family. I release you from the burden of pretending to care about me, and I release myself from the burden of seeking your approval. The silence that followed was profound. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to discomfort to the beginning glimmers of understanding. I took a step back, surveying the scene. Last time, the perfect table setting. The family gathered without me, the physical manifestation of what had always been emotionally true. Merry Christmas, I said quietly. Enjoy your dinner. With that, I turned and walked steadily through the living room, retrieving my coat and purse. No one followed me. No one called my name. As I opened the front door, I heard raised voices from the dining room, the beginning of what would undoubtedly be a complicated conversation. But it wouldn't be my conversation, not anymore. The winter air was crisp against my face as I walked to my car. Snow had begun to fall while I was inside, dusting the world with a clean white blanket. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, watching the snowflakes swirl in the glow of the porch light. Then I started the engine, closed the car door behind me, and drove away from the house I had grown up in, feeling lighter than I had in years. I checked into the Parkview Hotel 20 minutes after leaving my parents' house. It was one of the few places open on Christmas, catering to travelers and, apparently, family outcasts like myself. The lobby was decorated with tasteful holiday decor, a large tree twinkling in the corner, and soft carols playing through hidden speakers. Just you tonight? Asked the receptionist, a woman about my age with a kind smile and a name tag reading Sarah. Yes, I replied, suddenly aware of how this looked, checking into a hotel alone on Christmas evening. Still wearing a party dress, no luggage except my purse. I had a change of plans. Sarah's expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes held understanding. I've put you in a room with a view of the park. The restaurant is serving a special Christmas dinner until 1900ers if you're interested. I thanked her and took the key card, grateful for her discretion. In my room, I kicked off my heels and sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the evening replaying in my mind. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but it was accompanied by something unexpected: relief. My phone began buzzing almost immediately. The first text was from Sophie. What was in that envelope? Ethan is freaking out. Are you okay? I didn't respond. My mother called next. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. Emily, this behavior is completely unacceptable. You've ruined Christmas dinner and upset everyone. Call me back immediately so we can discuss how you're going to apologize to Ethan. I deleted the message. My father texted. Your mother is very upset. Please call. I turned my phone off. After a shower, I changed into the hotel bathrobe and ordered room service. The Christmas dinner special arrived on a covered tray: turkey with cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a slice of pumpkin pie. I ate by the window, watching snowfall on the park below, Christmas lights reflecting off the white ground in bursts of color. It wasn't how I had imagined spending Christmas evening, but there was a strange peace in the solitude: no walking on eggshells, no bracing for Ethan's next barb, no pretending that everything was fine when it so clearly wasn't. I turned my phone back on around 900, bracing myself for more messages. There were several missed calls from my parents and a dozen texts from various family members, but one message caught my eye. It was from Olivia. "Can we talk?" "Not about the locket, about Ethan." I hesitated, then replied, "Tomorrow, coffee at Marcus Cafe. 10:00 a.m. The next morning, I woke early, ordered breakfast to my room, and spent time journaling about the previous day, a practice Dr. Carter had encouraged. Writing down the exclusion, Ethan's cruelty, and my decision to walk away helped solidify my resolve. This wasn't a momentary emotional reaction, it was a necessary step toward healing. Olivia was already at Marcus Cafe when I arrived, fidgeting with a napkin. Grandmother Clara's locket conspicuously absent from her neck. She looked up as I approached, her expression a mixture of guilt and nervousness. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Why did you want to see me?" I asked, not unkindly, but not offering any easy absolution either. Olivia took a deep breath. "After you left, everything fell apart. Ethan tried to destroy the papers, but Jessica grabbed them first." She read some of it out loud. Olivia's eyes met mine. "Is it true that he told you I was making fun of your dress at cousin Lisa's wedding?" I nodded. "And that you said my career was just a hobby until I found a husband?" "I never said that," Olivia whispered. "I've always admired your work. I tell people my cousin is this amazing architect who designs sustainable buildings, and I never said you were too unstable to handle grandmother's locket." "That was Ethan too," I replied. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "He played us against each other. All these years. We talked for 2 hours, unraveling years of misunderstandings and manufactured conflicts." Olivia revealed that after I left, Jessica had confronted Ethan about other messages in the envelope, including texts to a woman who wasn't her. The Christmas dinner had devolved into multiple arguments, with Ethan eventually storming out, Jessica following in a separate car. "Your mom kept saying you were exaggerating, but your dad actually stood up to her," Olivia said, sounding as surprised as I felt. "He said they'd been enabling Ethan for too long. I've never seen him like that." When our meeting ended, Olivia handed me a small gift box. Inside was Grandmother Clara's locket. "It was always meant for you," she said simply. "I'm sorry it took me so long to return it." Over the following week, my phone continued to light up with messages. My mother's moved from demanding apologies to increasingly desperate attempts to maintain the status quo. "We can put this all behind us if you'll just talk to Ethan. Families have disagreements, but we need to stick together. You're overreacting to a simple misunderstanding about seating." My father, surprisingly, took a different approach. His initial messages asked me to call my mother, but gradually shifted. "I've been thinking about what happened," he wrote 3 days after Christmas. "I didn't handle things well. I should have spoken up. Sophie called me on New Year's Eve. Ethan and Jessica are getting divorced," she said without preamble. She found more messages on his phone. "It's a whole thing." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said and meant it. Jessica had never been unkind to me, just distant. "Are you?" Sophie sounded surprised. "After everything he did, his marriage failing doesn't fix anything," I replied. "It's just more pain." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "I should have said something at dinner. When Mom told you to eat in the car, I knew it was wrong. But I didn't speak up." "No, you didn't," I agreed, not offering easy forgiveness. "Can we have lunch sometime?" she asked hesitantly. "I'd like to try to be a better sister." I agreed to think about it. The most surprising communication came from my Aunt Linda, who had always been firmly in my mother's camp. She sent a handwritten card that arrived a week after New Year's. "What happened at Christmas dinner made me reflect on how we've all treated you over the years. I've been complicit in allowing Ethan to control the family narrative. I want to apologize and hope that someday you might give me a chance to know the niece I've never properly appreciated. Not everyone reached out. My mother's messages grew less frequent, then stopped entirely when I didn't respond. Several aunts and uncles maintained radio silence, presumably picking sides with my mother or simply avoiding the drama. Ethan never contacted me directly, but I heard through Sophie that he was attempting damage control, alternating between painting me as mentally unstable and admitting to some exaggerations, while minimizing their impact. 2 weeks after Christmas, I had my regular session with Dr. Carter. I told her everything from the dinner exclusion, to the envelope, to the aftermath. "How do you feel about your decision now?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "Sad," I admitted, "but not regretful. It feels like mourning something that never really existed in the first place." "And what about moving forward? Have you thought about what kind of relationship, if any, you want with your family?" "I think I need time," I said slowly. "With some of them, like Sophie and my dad, maybe there's a path forward with better boundaries. With others, like my mother and Ethan, I don't know if there's anything healthy possible there." Dr. Carter nodded. "That's a very insightful perspective. Healing family relationships doesn't always mean returning to the same dynamics. Sometimes it means creating entirely new ones with clear boundaries and expectations. And sometimes it means recognizing that certain relationships may never be healthy for you." As January turned to February, I began establishing those new boundaries. I agreed to occasional lunches with Sophie, with the understanding that she wouldn't relay information back to our mother or Ethan. I had one careful phone call with my father, who apologized again and asked if we could meet in person soon. I told him I wasn't ready yet. Olivia and I began rebuilding our relationship, discovering that without Ethan's interference, we actually had much in common. She invited me to her apartment for dinner, where she displayed grandmother Clara's photo in a prominent place. "I want to remember who she really was," Olivia explained. "Not the version of her that Ethan created to divide us." I maintained my distance from my mother and Ethan. It wasn't easy. There were days when I doubted myself, when old patterns of thinking suggested that I was being too harsh, that families should forgive anything. On those days, I reread my journal entry from Christmas night, reminding myself of exactly what had happened and how it had made me feel. By the time spring arrived, bringing cherry blossoms to the park outside my apartment window, I had created a new kind of family structure, one built on mutual respect rather than obligation, one where my voice mattered, one where a seat at the table was unconditional on accepting mistreatment. It wasn't perfect. There were still difficult conversations, still moments of grief for what might have been. But for the first time in my life, I was relating to my family as an adult with boundaries, not a child desperately seeking approval. And that made all the difference. 6 months after that Christmas showdown, I stood in my redecorated apartment, the teal walls catching the evening light. Gone were the beige tones I'd chosen to appease family visits. Now, vibrant artwork and thriving plants declared this space as mine. Each corner reflected the woman I'd fought to become, unapologetic, rooted in self-worth. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my colleague turned friend. "Lasagna night at ours, Mark's outdone himself. You in?" I grinned, confirming. Weekly dinners with Rachel and Mark had become my anchor, a chosen family built on laughter and mutual respect, far from the conditional love I'd once chased. At work, I'd stepped into a leadership role on a sustainable housing project, my voice now steady in meetings where I once feared sounding too proud. My boss noticed, calling my confidence quiet force. Personally, I'd started dating David, an environmental engineer whose respect for my boundaries felt like a revelation. Our relationship, though new, was grounded in trust, a stark contrast to the past. Therapy with Dr. Carter, now Beat Weekly, had taught me to silence the inner critic that echoed Ethan's voice, replacing it with my own. "You've redefined forgiveness," Dr. Carter said recently. "It's not about excusing them, it's about freeing yourself." That truth had become my compass. The family I'd left behind was shifting. Ethan's divorce from Jessica was final. He'd fled to Boston, his influence fading. Sophie said his absence let others breathe, their relationships no longer under his sway. My father and I met for lunch weekly, our conversations raw but honest. At one, he gripped his coffee mug, voice low. "I was a coward, Emily, letting Ethan control how we saw you. I failed you." My throat tightened as I touched his hand. "You're here now," I said. We were rebuilding, not whole, but truthful. Sophie, too, was changing her own therapy, unraveling how being the family's baby had stifled her. On a recent hike, she admitted, "I thought I had it easy. But Ethan's games trapped us all." Olivia became an ally, our bond rekindled over shared stories of grandmother Clara. She'd returned the locket, now mine, to wear on days that mattered, its silver frame holding Clara's youthful smile, a mirror to my own resilience. My mother, though, remained distant. Her texts oscillated from guilt trips to a grudging. I may have been insensitive. I'd declined her invitations to family gatherings, choosing self-protection over obligation. Her insistence that I was punishing her stung, but I let it be her burden, not mine. As summer bloomed, cherry blossoms framing my apartment's view, I planned a 4th of July gathering, my table, my rules. Sophie, my father, Olivia, and friends like Rachel would be there. My mother was not invited. The decision felt like freedom. One evening, on my balcony, journal in hand, I wrote, "Family isn't blood, it's respect, carved through actions. I've built a table where I'm seen, where my worth isn't a negotiation. Some relatives belong here, others don't. I don't need their approval to know my place." Closing the journal, I watched the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. The Emily who begged for a seat last Christmas was gone. I'd walked away from their table and found my own richer, truer, mine. Life has taught me that true family isn't just blood, it's those who see and value your worth. Like Emily, I've learned to walk away from tables with no seat for me, building one filled with love and respect instead. Don't fear standing up for yourself. It's the first step to finding peace. Have you ever set boundaries to protect your heart? Share your story in the comments below and hit that subscribe button to join us for more heartfelt journeys of growth. Thank you for being here. Let's inspire each other